Have you ever met that person who, even when life seems to be falling apart, responds with a smile and an "it's okay, you don't need to worry"? While most people vent to friends, seek comfort, or even burst into tears, they keep everything to themselves, as if they were carrying a locked trunk of emotions. At first glance, it may seem like strength, maturity, or even coldness. But is that all? Or could it be that, behind this silence, there is an invisible battle that few can see? First of all, it's important to say, there's nothing wrong with not sharing your pain. Some people simply prefer to process things alone, and that doesn't make them any less resilient or less human. It might just be a different way of dealing with the world. But when this habit becomes a pattern, when a person never, under any circumstances, opens their heart, the story is often more complex than it seems. Perhaps, at some point in their lives, they learned that vulnerability is dangerous. Imagine a child who, when crying, heard "stop it," or a teenager who, when trusting someone, had their words used against themselves. The brain registers, if I show weakness, I will be rejected. If I need help, I will be a burden. Over time, the fear of exposure turns into a shield so thick that even they themselves forget what it's like to feel welcomed. It's not that they don't want to talk, it's that they don't know how anymore. This behavior can also hide a distorted belief of self-sufficiency. Many of these people grew up being told that problems are to be solved, not shared, or that asking for help is a sign of weakness. They internalize the idea that they alone must handle everything, as if carrying the world on their shoulders was a badge of honor. And when someone offers support, an internal conflict arises. If I accept, I will be admitting that I am not strong enough. So, they smile, say everything is fine and move on, even though inside they are drowning. But there is another side, less obvious and more painful, the fear of being a burden. Some silent people have already experienced the bitter taste of being ignored when they needed it most. Maybe they vented once and instead of understanding, they got a "that's nothing" or a blank stare. The subliminal message was clear: your problems don't matter. From then on, keeping silent becomes an act of survival. Better to suffer in silence than risk being invisible again. And then comes the question that few people ask: what happens to everything that is not said? The fears, the frustrations, the hurts, where do they go? Some keep everything in a mental box, locked under lock and key, until one day it overflows without warning. Others transform pain into silent anger, which comes out in the form of irony, distancing, or even physical illness. The body, after all, speaks what the mouth refuses to say. Silence is not empty, it's an ocean of unspoken words. But here's the truth that few silent people allow themselves to believe: you don't need to prove anything to anyone. It is not weakness to ask for help, just as it is not strength to suffocate your emotions. Sometimes the bravest act is not carrying the world alone, but letting someone hold your hand while you cry. Because true resilience is not in never falling, but in knowing that there are people willing to help you get up. If you are one of those people who keep everything to themselves, no, your problems deserve to be heard. Your pains are not a nuisance, they are part of what makes you human. And if today you don't have the courage to say them out loud, start slowly. Write it down on paper. Talk to a pet. Tell the mirror. The first step to freeing yourself from silence is to give yourself permission to exist, no masks, no excuses. And if you know someone like that, don't give up. Sometimes an "I'm here" is all that person needs to finally let go of the G. Keep low. Did you like this reflection? Comment here. Do you also tend to keep your things to yourself? What makes you open your heart, or what stops you? Share with anyone who needs to hear this today. And if you want more texts like this, activate the bell so you don't miss anything. Until next time. And remember, your words have value, even if you don't have the courage to say them yet. The silence that speaks, when keeping words, is an act of survival. Have you ever noticed how some people carry an entire ocean in their eyes, but only let drops escape? They respond with a quick smile, deflect the conversation with a joke, or simply disappear when the topic gets deep. While the world screams talk, vent, share, they choose silence as their refuge. But is this weakness, or a way to protect what doesn't yet have a name? It's not stubbornness. It's not pride. Sometimes it's the only way not to drown. Imagine that your emotions are like a messy room, Clothes on the floor, open drawers, scattered memories. Some manage to organize everything in front of others, they even go live organizing their closet. But there are people who need to close the door first. Not because they are ashamed of the mess, but because they know that if someone comes in now, they will get lost explaining each object instead of finally putting them away. These people tend to be those who listen more than they speak, because they learned that loose words can become weapons. Those who write at midnight and delete everything in the morning, because the paper can handle what the voice cannot. Those who smile and say I'm fine with an intonation that sounds like please don't ask anymore. But here's the secret, their silence is not empty. It's a place where things are still being worked out. A wound that cannot be shown until the scab is firm enough to not bleed at the slightest touch. Why is it so hard to let someone in? Because trust is like lending a rare book. You don't know if they'll return it, if they'll fold the pages, or if they'll laugh at your note in the margin. Some people have had their stories torn up, underlined with red marker, or even used as evidence against them. So, they learn, if the world wants a summary, let it have the summary. The rest is kept in a locked box, the key to which they themselves are still looking for. And there is another, deeper fear, that, when they speak, they will discover that not even they understand exactly what they feel. It's like trying to describe a color that only exists in your head. How do I explain this longing that is not for a person, not for a place, but for a version of me that was lost? Sometimes silence is the only honest answer. But what about when the silence begins to suffocate? Here comes the paradox. The same wall that protects also isolates. And one day, the person wakes up and realizes that no one knocks on the door anymore, not because they don't want to come in, but because they've learned that there's no point in waiting for an answer. If you are one of those people who swallow words as if they were bitter pills, no, your silence deserves to be heard. It doesn't have to be today. It doesn't have to be with everyone. But start giving names to what you feel, even if just in your notebook, in the shower, or on the way home. Because what isn't said doesn't go away, it just gets heavier. What if you love someone like that? Don't force the door. Instead, leave a note under it. I'm here when you want to talk. Or if you just want to be quiet together. You don't need to tell me anything. I just wanted you to know that you're not a bother. If today doesn't work, tomorrow will work too. Sometimes the greatest act of love is not demanding explanations. What is your silence trying to say? Perhaps he is protecting a truth that still has no words. Or waiting for the right moment, like a seed that knows that if it sprouts too soon, winter will freeze it. Or, who knows, he's already said everything, and what's missing is someone willing to listen in the spaces between the lines. Aces. If you recognized yourself here, don't judge yourself. Your rhythm is yours. Your voice, or lack thereof, is not a defect, it is a language. And every language deserves to be deciphered, not only by others, but by yourself. Now tell me. Sparkles, do you also have things that you can only say in silence? Sparkles, what makes you trust someone enough to break that wall? Sparkles, or, if you're one of those people who always everything's fine, what are you hiding behind that little smile? Share this text with anyone who needs to hear that they are not alone, even if that someone is you. And if you want more reflections that hurt and heal at the same time, turn on notifications so you don't miss anything. Until next time. And remember, the words you don't say today could be the ones that save you tomorrow. But only if you let them exist, even if only on paper, in music, or in the sigh that no one heard. P.S. If you got this far, it's because something in this text touched a wound or a hope. Don't ignore that. The silence that speaks louder than words. Have you ever noticed how some people have such an intense presence that they don't even need to speak? They arrive, they observe, and the air around them seems to carry a different weight, as if their every breath were an unfinished sentence, each look, a suspended paragraph. It's not shyness. It's not indifference. It's as if their silence were a foreign language, and only those who have lived in a strange land can understand it. And you? Have you ever found yourself saving words as if they were rare coins, spending them only when the exchange value is certain? Or is it that, deep down, you fear that your sentences, once released, can no longer be collected like birds that, when they fly, don't return to their cage? The anatomy of silence. It's no surprise that the quietest people are the ones who listen the most. They know that truth creeps into the spaces between words, where others see only emptiness. While the world screams, they collect sighs, half-words, looks that last a second too long. And when they finally speak, it's like opening a window after a storm. The air that comes in is fresh, necessary, full of everything that hasn't been said before. But be careful, not all silence is wisdom. Sometimes it's just fear disguised as patience. Fear that your words will be distorted like reflections in broken mirrors. Fear that what you feel won't fit into ready-made sentences. Fear that, when you speak, you become too vulnerable and the world, as always, doesn't know how to deal with fragile things. And then, silence becomes a shield. Or a prison. It depends on the day. What is your silence screaming? If you are one of those people who doesn't speak much, but when you speak, the world stops to listen, no, this is no coincidence. It's because you chose quality over quantity, depth over noise. But if your silence is a wall, not a bridge, ask yourself. What are you protecting? A pain? An inconvenient truth? To yourself? What are you missing? Connections? Opportunities to be seen? What if, instead of saving, you started sowing? Words, like seeds, only grow when they are planted. The paradox of silence is that, sometimes, those who speak least have the most to say. But there's no point in having a treasure if it stays locked in the basement of your throat. When silence becomes treason. Here's a difficult truth: silence can also be a form of abandonment. When you don't say I love you for fear of not hearing it back, but you forget that the other person is also waiting, and guessing is tiring. When you swallow your anger in the name of peace, but the peace you build is a house of cards, ready to collapse at the first wind. When you let others fill in the blanks with assumptions, and then are surprised when they get the drawing wrong. Silence is not always strength. Sometimes it's just cowardice by another name. How to break the spell, without losing the magic. If you want to maintain the essence of your silence without letting it suffocate you, EXP. Erimenti. 1. Keep your voice down, but speak up. A sincere whisper is worth more than a rehearsed scream. 2. Write what you can't say. Letters, poems, scribbles on a napkin, unspoken words need a place to die or be born. 3. Let silence be a pause, not an end. Sometimes what isn't said today can be tomorrow's story. 4. Allow yourself to be imperfect. Not every sentence needs to be a masterpiece. Sometimes a crooked I miss you is prettier than a perfect okay. The last question, and the one that hurts the most. What are you waiting to talk about? May the world be safer. Let people guess. Or that, one day, the words you didn't say today won't hurt as much tomorrow. Cruel but necessary tip: people are not fortune tellers. And time doesn't give back what you didn't give. To take, and not forget. Sparkles, your silence is powerful. But your power should not be a cage. Sparkles, talking is not betraying yourself. It is often about saving what could be lost along the way. Sparkles, the words you keep today could be the ones someone needs to hear so they don't give up tomorrow. Yes, even you. Now tell me. What is the phrase you most regret not having said? What makes you trust someone enough to break the silence? If you could turn your silence into a color, what would it be? And why? Share this text with anyone who needs to hear that not all emptiness is an absence. Sometimes, it's just a space waiting to be filled. And if you recognized yourself here, keep this reminder: your words, however imperfect, deserve to exist. Even if it's just in a diary, in a song, or in a sigh that only the moon heard. Until next time. And remember, the world already has too much noise. Don't let your silence become another noise, this time, of everything left unsaid. P.S. If you've made it this far, it's because something in this text has touched a loose chord within you. Don't ignore it. The best stories begin when we stop being afraid to turn the page. Open book sparkles. The silence that speaks, and what it hides between the lines. Have you ever noticed how some silences weigh more than screams? They're not those casual blanks, like I forgot what I was going to say or I'd rather listen. These are the charged silences, those that occupy space in the room like a third body, breathing slowly, waiting for someone to notice that they are there. They are not the absence of words. These are words that have not yet found the courage to be born. Think about the last time you held a sentence in your throat until it hurt. Maybe it was an "I miss you" for someone who left without goodbye. Or an "I can't take it anymore" in a relationship that has already turned to ashes. Or even an "I'm proud of you" for a son who has never heard that from his own father. These words have not disappeared. They have become emotional nodules, growing inside us until we decide, either vomit them out, or bury them forever. The anatomy of silence. Or, why do we choose to remain silent when we most need to speak? 1. The fear of the earthquake. Some things, when said, change the map. An unrequited "I love you," an "I was wrong" that reveals a flaw, or "I need help" that exposes vulnerability. Silence, then, becomes a retaining wall because we prefer to endure the internal tremor than face the chaos that words can cause. Real example: how many people do you know who knew a marriage was ending years before someone finally said it? Silence was the patchwork that covered the crack in the wall. 2. The illusion of control. Being silent gives the feeling that we still have the steering wheel in our hands. If I don't speak, I don't lose. If I don't complain, I don't fight. If I don't ask, I can't be refused. But here's the trap: this control is a false currency. You can hold on to a no for years, but it will fester in your palm until it becomes something you don't even recognize anymore. 3. The inheritance of others' silences. We learn to remain silent by observing. If your mother swallowed tears, if your father turned anger into hours on the couch, if your grandparents treated pain as a matter behind closed doors, you inherited this code. It's not genetics, it's emotional culture. Question that hurts: how many generations in your family died with unspoken words? 4. Silence as self-sabotage. Sometimes, we remain silent not out of fear, but out of punishment. If I don't say it, she will realize how much she hurt me. If I don't ask, they will see that they are selfish. It's a dangerous game because, in the end, the only person who loses is you. What happens when we finally speak? Spoiler: it's not magic. It's alchemy. 1. Words are keys, not locks. Have you ever felt that feeling of physical relief after confessing something you've been holding back for a long time? It's no coincidence. Talking is an act of decompression, like opening the valve on a pressure cooker before it explodes. Science behind: studies show that verbalizing emotions reduces activity in the amygdala, the fear center of the brain. In other words, your words literally calm your body. 2. The domino effect of honesty. A truth told breaks the spell. When you admit "I'm exhausted," you give others permission to admit the same. When you say "I feel alone," you make room for someone to respond "me too." Silence is contagious. But so is courage. 3. The risk that pays. Yes, talking can go wrong. You may be judged, ignored, or even lose someone in the process. But here's the secret: what you lose when you remain silent is always greater. Crude metaphor: saving words is like swallowing glass. It may not hurt at the moment, but each piece that comes down cuts inside. How to break the spell, without requiring a magic wand. 1. Start small, but start. It doesn't have to be a speech. Could it be, or "I'm not well today" in the family group? And "I need to vent to a trusted friend." Or "I thought of you for those who are missed." Golden rule: if the sentence fits on a post-it, it's a start. 2. Write before you speak. If your voice fails, let your hand speak for you. Letters, messages, even drafts that you will never send. The act of writing organizes chaos, and often, just seeing the words on paper makes you feel lighter. 3. Choose your target audience. Not every truth needs to be shouted to the world. Sometimes a single pair of ears is enough. Key question: who in your life has kept you secret? This person is a good candidate to be your anchor. 4. Accept that it won't be perfect. You're going to stutter. You're going to cry. You'll say things that sound silly later. All good. The most important words are rarely the most beautiful, they are the truest. To reflect and act. Pick one and respond in the comments, or just to yourself. What is the lie you repeat most to avoid telling the truth? X. I'm fine when you're not. I don't care when you call. If you could send an anonymous message to someone without consequences, what would you say? No filters. No fear. When was the last time you cried alone over something you didn't tell anyone? What stopped you from sharing? An invitation, not a goodbye. If you've come this far, it's because some word in this text scratched a wound in you. It wasn't by chance. The things that hurt the most are the things that need light the most. So here is my challenge to you. This week, say one thing you've been holding back. It doesn't have to be dramatic. It could be I admire you, I'm sorry, or even I feel that way too. The important thing is to break the silence even if it's just a crack. What if you don't feel ready? All good. But promise one thing, don't let that word rot inside you. Write it down on paper. Scream into your pillow. Sing in the shower. Give it a place to exist. Because in the end, what we don't give doesn't disappear, it just turns into something bigger, heavier, harder to carry, to take, and never forget. Sparkles, your silence is not failure. It's a place where your words are preparing to be born. Sparkles, talking is not about courage. It's about choice. Would you rather carry the weight alone or share the load? Sparkles, the truths you keep today could be the bridges someone needs tomorrow. Including you. Now tell me, what is the word you most fear saying? And what would happen if you let her go? Who, in your life, has already broken a silence that changed everything for you? What did they say? If your silence were an object, what would it be? A locked door? A trunk full of letters? A foggy mirror? Share this text with anyone who needs to hear that not all emptiness is absence. Sometimes, it's just a word waiting for permission to come out. And if you recognized yourself here, keep this. His words, however shaky, deserve air. Even if it's in a diary at 3 a.m., in a song that no one hears, or in a sigh that only the moon witnesses. Until next time. And remember, the world already has too much noise. Don't let your silence become another echo, this time, of what you stopped living for fear of making noise. P.S. If you saved this text, it's because something here touched a note that was still loose in you. Don't ignore it. The best stories begin when we stop being afraid to turn the page, even if it's just for ourselves. Open book, Sparkles. And if you made it to P.S., I have one last request. Write that word now. On paper, in a comment, in a note on your cell phone. Give it a little piece of existence. You'll be surprised by what happens next.